Hey everyone, welcome to Fridays for Future India's YouTube channel. I'm Vaishnavi and I'm a volunteer at FFF India and I will be hosting today's webinar. Fridays for Future India has been having a series of interesting webinars lined on account of International Youth Week, where we discussed environment advocacy, being a climate activist, and Indian education system till today. And today we have another interesting topic in hand, and that is ecofeminism. And before we get into it, I would like to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. We have Disha here, who has volunteered with FFF Bangalore and FFF India, and now works with other climate movements like XR and Polluters Out. We have Radhika, a 17-year-old volunteer. She likes to read, write, and sing. Archisha has just graduated from high school and is currently college hunting. And lastly, we have Ananya, a nature lover and an advocate for climate justice and sustainability. She's a strong believer in the power of people in changing the planet. And she loves, yeah, sorry. I thank you all for doing this webinar. And with that, I would like to go forward with the discussion. So how we'll go forward with this is I'll ask you all a question, and each one of you can give your opinions on it and pass it on to the next person, and we can have a discussion at the end of each question. Uh, my first question would be, what does feminism mean to each one of you? Disha, would you like to start?
Okay, I couldn't unmute for some reason. Okay. So to me, feminism is not just about equality, it's about equity because in a lot of cases, equality isn't enough. It can't just give women and men, non okay, men and non-men the same opportunities because that isn't enough. Because non-men also have a lot of uh, responsibilities and burdens that men often don't face. So it's about making equitable spaces for me and safe spaces for non-men to participate.
Would you like to pass it on to someone?
Okay, Archisha.
Archisha, you're on mute.
Sorry, I agree with most of what Disha said. Feminism to me is a movement against patriarchy, and I feel that its goal is to ultimately achieve equality via equity. I pass it on to Radhika.
So for me, feminism is not just it's first it's empowerment of women regardless of their social or economic background, and it's also a sense of normalcy, meaning that anything that a girl does should get the same reaction as when a boy does the same thing. There shouldn't be like a sense of shock or surprise, but just because a girl did it. Yeah, I pass it on to Ananya.
I feel like feminism for me is just uplifting and supporting and nurturing an environment like women and making the environment seem like there's being like harboring a very accepting environment where any kind of difference, whether it is economic or even related to gender or the various other genders that we have, are very well accepted and people are okay with difference.
Yeah, so I move on to a second question and to our actual discussion. What is ecofeminism? Would like to start?
I can start.
Yeah.
So, ecofeminism is basically a movement that does not separately combine environmentalism and feminism as movements together, but it views environmentalism from the lens of feminism. So, it puts women and environment on a similar plane in the sense that both have a history of oppression, both have been exploited in the past heavily. So, ecofeminism, therefore, is a movement where environment and feminism are put in the same plane. I pass it on to Ananya.
adding to Archisha, I feel like only women are oppressed, but the nature is being dominated over, because people, only such organisms, only such people can be oppressed who who have the ability to, um, I mean, people who can otherwise speak up can be oppressed but cannot be dominated over. While the environment, there's a lot of speciesism, and creatures other than humans cannot, I mean, oh, they can't speak to us. So I feel like ecofeminism combines that, it stems from the idea that since the beginning, men have tried to put themselves up on a higher pedestal as compared to women and other species, and thought of themselves as superior in the sense that they are able to rationalize things better than anyone else. So just that difference creates a very imbalanced view, and and it's a barrier for understanding other things. And I feel like that's where ecofeminism comes in. Uh, Disha, would you like to go?
Yeah, I seem to be having some trouble unmuting. But to me, ecofeminism basically exposes the depression of non-men, because I don't. I feel like the term women isn't inclusive of just like, okay, that's another. It isn't inclusive of like the various gender binaries. So like ecofeminism to me exposes the repression of non-men and like environment as intellect it's intellect and rooted in patriarchal structures. But again, we need to remember that like non-men aren't the only people who are oppressed, so which is why intersectional activism came in. While feminism is a movement, there are other injustices in the world who also cannot, who are also suffering from various injustices and oppression and exploitation. Uh, so to me, it's not enough. There should be more, which is when the intersectional environmentalism was brought forward. I feel like intersectional environmentalism also addresses how like the different injustices happening to marginalized communities and how the earth and all of this is interconnected. Ecofeminism isn't just about how women are repressed by patriarchal structures. We also need to notice that women, I mean, it is how patriarchal structures impact women, but it's also about how women have to suffer the brunt of the climate crisis more than men. So, like one example would be in the best example is if there was no water in the house, the women would be expected to carry water from miles ago. And this isn't just an example, this is like a fact that's been happening in many villages in India. So it's ecofeminism needs is addresses that those oppressions. Um, I will pass it. Are we moving on to the next question?
Radhika hasn't spoken yet.
Okay, Radhika, sorry.
So to me, ecofeminism is basically when it's like it's a branch of feminism, and we basically study the connection between women and nature, and we also study how women and nature are treated in this male dominated society, and look at society from a different perspective, not from I feel like even today, sometimes the society is looked at from a very male point of view. And I feel that ecofeminism not only involves women, it also includes nature, children, old people. So I feel that ecofeminism is more inclusive of other things.
Sure. So, with that, we move on to our next question. And my question is the history. There's a history to ecofeminism and how it started, about its founders. Ajisha, would you like to throw some light on that?
Yeah, so ecofeminism was founded by a French ecofeminist and author. Her name is Francoise Le Bon. and ecofeminism as a movement took birth in the United States. I think Radhika can tell us a little bit more about that.
So ecofeminism gained prominence in the late 1970s, early 1980s in the US, where a coalition of academically and professionally sound women came together to establish women's like rights. And when like so basically the motivation for ecofeminism came from the fact that women and nature have been considered equal for a long period of time, and that the motive of this movement was to establish respect for both women and nature, which we often lack. uh, I would like does Disha have anything to say about this?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about some technical glitches. So I feel uh, ecofeminism, even though it was born in the 1970s, it was largely born out of like a white environmental movement, and which has its own cons, because we know that the most white environmentalists won't be affected by this. So there's also racism that comes into play in the starting of ecofeminism, uh, which is why I personally, you can be an ecofeminist as well, like as an intersectional activist, but I find myself leaning towards intersectional activism, environmentalism more, because intersectional environmentalism was born out of other social justice and green movements, and it was mainly born out of like the Black Lives Matter movement back in like 2019 and actually like the beginning of this year. So to me, ecofeminism isn't inclusive enough, but it definitely does a good job in highlighting uh, the oppressions of non men.
Ananya, would you like to add on to that?
I mean, everyone pretty much covered everything, but I'd also like to say that there's a long history of women being very proactive about doing something for the environment for its intrinsic value rather than looking at what benefits they get out of it. And an example is when I was in conversation with Chandi Prasad Bhatt. He was the one of the founders of Chipko movement. He said that when they were like afforesting the hills, the men were like, let's get economically benefitable trees, while women were like, no, let's just like get trees where birds sit and play. It's going to be so amazing. So I feel like it's not a generalization in any way, but I have personally seen more women being more proactive and caring for the environment for its intrinsic value.
Okay. So the next question would be that ecofeminism principles are based around nature being the center for preservation and protection and requiring efficient use of natural resources. How is that idea being destroyed today? Radhika, would you like to start?
So ecofeminism basically like we refer to nature as mother nature. So mother nature nurtures us like a mother would nurture her baby in her womb and provide all the resources to her baby. And same way, nature provides everything humans need for existence. And I feel that nowadays, like in the name of development, unnecessary projects are being put up, which has led to a lot of like destruction. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Ajisha, would you like to speak on it?
Yeah, so I feel that the idea of basically the core principles of ecofeminism, which are obviously environmental protection, are being destroyed right now. Quite obviously, I mean, we have the recent things that are happening in India right now, as an example, we're inviting capitalists to take over our country at the cost of the environment. And yeah, that's the most obvious destruction that's happening right now. And to add to what Radhika said about the mother nature thing, I don't necessarily agree to that, because the belief itself that, mothers, women are expected to be nurturing is is it's kind of stereotypical, and it's kind of traditional in the sense that it's reinforced again and again that it's the woman who is supposed to be, providing for its children and nurturing, and therefore mother nature is supposed to be nurturing, and this is what has caused women and our planet to be exploited the way it is being exploited, because we're normalizing that by calling it nurturing. Yeah. I would like to pass it to Ananya.
I feel like as as traditions have been eroded and cultures have been eroded. I mean, look at the Vedas, for example. There's such a big culture of us all being in the same, being the children of the same earth, right? But I feel like part of it is being lost because of loss of tradition and colonialism or the mind, as Vandana Shiva points out. But I also feel like it's the thought that uh, earth is just dead matter, and that, there's nothing more to life than, just the scientific. I'm not, and science is really brilliant and it's really great for predicting things, but just that invasion of thought key, there's nothing more to objects than to creatures than molecules in them, reducing the idea of life to material. And that's the same's been done for women in a lot of societies. And I feel like that's a big reason why we're seeing such a callous attitude around natural resources, and yeah, around rec- reckless development. Disha.
Um, I feel like there isn't enough concentration on environmental protection in India or anywhere else because the government is uh, steeped in casteism and a lot of other injustices. They don't. The last thing they would care about is destroying the patriarchy. If anything, they partake and propagate the patriarchy even more than before. Uh, they don't respect the environment or women in general. Um, so I feel like they just tried a lot of things, including our trees and our women.
Okay, moving on to the next question. How is environmental destruction and social injustices like patriarchy, racism, or even poverty related?
Um, I'll start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I feel that um evils like racism, poverty, and even capitalism are related to environmental destruction because there are obvious links between them. The link between environmental destruction and racism would be colonialism, which has facilitated degradation of human beings as well as the environment. So both of them have kind of the similar thing to, blame for their birth and propagation, because we all know that the it's the colonizers who set out to exploit the natural resources of other countries and their people. So yeah. And again, similarly, capitalism, so poverty and environment are both being, sorry, people struck by poverty and environment are both being targeted by capitalism incessantly throughout decades as of now, and India is only facilitating that further with its recent developments. So, yeah, I pass it on to Disha.
Uh, Obviously, everything is connected because marginalized communities, let's say the lower caste, sorry, the lower caste people in India are subject to more of the climate crisis than us, and the indigenous people are. The best example is in Mumbai. There is a community of fishermen called Kolas. They live on the coastal road, and the coastal road project that the government has planned is going to affect them first. That the recent storms they faced that affected them first. So indigenous people, they are indigenous people, it affected them first, and after them the low caste people, who are more prone to the climate crisis because they are subject to live in areas that aren't environmentally sustainable. Like in the US, black BIPOC activists, or not activists, BIPOC people lived in uh, area that was affected by the storm Sandy. I think that was it was called. I could be wrong about the name. I'm pretty bad with names. So they live in the area that was affected by the most because housing expenditure is lesser there because it's more prone to floods. It's more prone to rain. So that's one of the so the system makes it in such a way that it's on the only accessible routes to them come with dangers, and in this case it is the climate crisis, and this is for marginalized people everywhere. And feminism obviously, like I think I explained about how patriarchy has been affecting women and the climate crisis. So all of this is interlinked. So we won't win the climate. We won't have a chance at like winning the climate crisis if we aren't intersectional and radical about what we do because we don't have a lot of time.
Ananya, would you like to add on to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, as Disha said, it disproportionately affects climate change and other environmental crises disproportionately affect certain sections of the society, and people who are poor, although they're more resilient in some way, are most hardly hit, and even like the disparity between just look at the gap between the number of people emitting carbon dioxide and emitting carbon into the atmosphere versus the people getting affected by it. It's just a very it's a very, I don't know how to describe it. It's not, there's no equity in the system, and also an answer to the question, environmental injustice and poverty and all these are related because I feel like there is an idea of there being a property, of land being owned, of creatures being owned, of objectification. This very, it's a very prominent culture. We just objectify animals. There's things to eat. We objectify. A lot of people tend to objectify women. A lot of people feel entitled to have a larger share of natural resources. And I mean, what even are really resources? They're not, I mean, streams, rivers don't only belong to us. Who can even like say I have a right over this river? I mean, I feel like it's getting worse because we're thinking that we are entitled to land, entitled to natural resources, and we're entitled to a larger share, and that's how I feel like poverty is comes into the picture.
Yeah, Disha.
Sorry, I agree with a lot of what Ananya said, and I think the root of all evil is stem from the idea that some beings are superior than the other, which is why we're fighting for what we are. So I just wanted to add that because I agree with what she said.
I feel like a part of it also stems from insecurity. And I feel like when the colonizers set out to grab land, they weren't very sure of how much they'd. I mean, there's always that level of insecurity, you know, am I more important than her? And if I feel I am, I have to establish that. And I feel like that's where it becomes versus instead of one single entity. And yeah, it's just getting wider and wider the gap. And yeah.
So we have a question from one of our viewers, and that is, do you see the role of ecofeminism in progressive legislations like, I think that's France, through increased women participation and representation in building grassroots democracies in a masculinistic Hindu Rashtra? Should I repeat the question? Okay. So, do you see the role of ecofeminism in progressive legislations like France through increased women participation and representation in building grassroots democracies?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you like repeat it?
Okay. Do you see the role of ecofeminism in progressive legislations like France through increased participation of women and representation in building grassroots democracies in a masculinistic country like ours? Is the question.
I'm not really okay. Archie, go ahead.
I'm so sorry, my internet connection was a bit unstable. I did not catch the question.
Okay, then I think we should just move on because it's probably not clear.
You can always put it in the chat, like just so you can
Okay.
refer to it.
Um, okay, so for the next question, when we look at gender stereotypes, um, non-men are portrayed to be calm, caring, and giving, and on the other hand, men are shown to be powerful, strong, apathetic. Does ecofeminism reinforce this? We can have a discussion on this, so
I
it's open.
I can't say there's a clear distinction. There never is, and I don't think we can stereotype men on being more, uh, I don't know, strong, powerful, because women can be equally as strong and powerful. But I mean, in my, like, as far as I have experienced, I have come across more women fighting for this issue, and I feel like it comes because all of us feel like we're more affected by it, and it's not okay. It's not okay to be a woman and not stand up for this, because it's not only us. It's a lot of mothers. It's a lot of uh, girls who are growing up and seeing things like um, getting mansplained, getting dominated by men, being a victim of the conservative society we are in, the patriarchy. And I feel like it is important to fight against this. And ecofeminism is not, it could be way more inclusive, but it's a good place to start. I mean, certainly I have in my life seen more women doing something about it, but I can't really say there is a distinction, or I can't really impose a stereotype that women are more caring.
Okay, so I feel that if one views ecofeminism through, if one believes that ecofeminism exists because women and nature have a connection because women are more empathetic, and it's a mystical connection that, hey, I just feel something towards nature. I don't I think that's not very inclusive, because while it's not explicitly saying that other identities do not feel connected to nature, it is saying that only women have that mystical connection with nature. And I think that if that's how ecofeminism is viewed, it does reinforce the stereotype. But I feel how I personally view ecofeminism is that women and nature are connected in the sense that both have been exploited, and both have a history of oppression, and both have been treated kind of similarly. I mean, women are women are given nicknames, akin to animals like chick and whatnot, and Earth is called Mother Earth. So I feel that even though that's not correct, but like I feel that in this sense, if ecofeminism is viewed, then it does not reinforce the stereotype.
Maybe,
Radhika, go on, go. Sorry, I thought Radhika
sorry,
wanted to speak. My bad.
sorry.
So I feel that again, like um, not that men like don't have feelings or something, but I feel like that the compassion and all that women has led to ecofeminism being such a big thing. I feel like they use that compassion to fight for what they believe in, and that is why today we see so many women fighting as climate activists. Yeah, Disha.
No, no, please complete your point.
No, no, I that that's
Okay. Uh, um, I feel like gender roles do exist. They shouldn't, but they do exist. And men are raised in a patriarchal society where, like, they are if they cry or if they show emotions, they're deemed weak. This is definitely something I've seen growing up, and it exists. So it's I think I do believe that a lot of men grow up with that stigma, which is something we definitely need to break. Um, I, Personally, I've seen a lot of non-men in the climate movement. I can't explain why this is. Um, I think, yeah, even like FF was like mostly FF is mostly women, non-men. So I'm not sure what the reason could be. I think one of the reasons I can think of is um, when you're an activist, women are it's more accepted by the society when a non-man is an activist. When men speak out about issues that matter to them, either because of patriarchy, their friends may make fun of them or their family isn't encouraging. So all of these are factors that influence a decision on why you partake more in activism. Uh, and women are definitely, I wouldn't say women are more akin to their emotions because we aren't our the emotions are we are allowed to express is happiness. There's always this, there's even a Kannada saying that like women are supposed to be seen, not heard, and like women should smile more and all of that. These are very common slangs that I've heard. And it's there's always been this rooted thing that women are supposed to be happier no matter how sad they are. They can't express it if if they're angry. They can't actually express it. There's so we I think I personally have a hard time expressing myself when I'm angry or anxious because I've always been I wouldn't say my parents, but just in the society I've grown up, whenever I was angry I was called difficult, I was called a lot of things, and I've never learned to express my emotions in terms of anger very well. It's something I'm still working on. So that is definitely a thing we grow up with this. And like men are uh, when men are angry they're considered more macho. Yeah, so gender roles do exist, but they should not exist because they've been imbibed in us.
I think I can add to a bit of what Disha said. I feel like while we do, I mean, I feel like I am a very expressive person and more expressive than a lot of guys I've come across. But it's also that sometimes as women we know what really is going on with our children, with like say love canal, right? It wasn't really all the men that came out, it was the mothers, because they knew it was bad for their children, because they knew that the planet is really theirs, as opposed to people who didn't maybe like, again, gender roles exist although they shouldn't, but women are probably more connected with their children, and maybe that's why they feel more strongly about their future. I'm just trying to draw parallels. I'm not stating anything. And also that um, we are more exposed to injustices. So I mean, since the beginning, for example, I loved cricket when I grew up, and I got really bullied for that because it was a boys' sport. And from a very early age, I started looking at these issues deeply. And because I feel like we're exposed to more injustices, we sometimes ask a lot of questions. And again, it's a big, I can't generalize, but this is what has happened with me.
I agree with a lot of what Ananya said, but I feel like the reason why women feel more, I don't know, more inclined towards protecting their children and, taking to the streets when it's their lives at cost is because men are conditioned in our current patriarchal society to be distant and apathetic even when it comes to their own children. It's the mother who is supposed to be, again, nurturing. Like if you're upset, you're told to go to your mother, and your father is supposed to be the one with the heavy hand. So I feel that again, like this is not right, and it's the conditioning of the patriarchal society that has caused mothers who may be women to, I don't know, to be more visibly connected to the environment for the sake of their children. I don't think it's a very it's a connection at a very personal level, but just because they're women. Yeah.
I
But
personally feel it depends on how sensitive a person is or not, and that again depends on where we've grown up and under what conditions we've grown up in. So moving on to the next question, uh, do you see any correlation with animal abuse and issues like domestic violence and women trafficking and other violence against women?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so like ever since unprecedented times, women have been like the women and animals. I definitely feel that there's a correlation. I feel like women are like the beasts of burden. They are expected to take care of the household. They're expected to take care of the kids. And I feel also that in like olden days, like cows and were expected to carry weight for people. Also, that they are associated with entertainment, where animals are used as a source of entertainment for people, and women are used as a source of entertainment. So I do feel that that has been that someone oh, that domestic violence and animal abuse has a lot to do with one another. Uh, and that someone who is violent with the female members of the family will definitely tend to be violent with their animals as well. Yeah.
okay, I think that so there is this concept called opposite dualism, which basically means that when two things are different, they are not just portrayed as different, they're portrayed as opposites, like man and woman, like it's the opposite sexes, right? And the same way humans and human and animal, right? So I feel that if a person and okay, so it's a fact that most of the victims of domestic abuse are non-men, right? So if a person feels entitled to abusing somebody, a human, and the human race as a whole feels entitled to abuse animals, so I feel that all of this just comes down to believing that a group is superior to another group, and the that in a hierarchy that a hierarchy exists in the first place, and certain groups have more value than others do. So yeah.
I just want to add up on what Artisha said. I also feel that it's the environment at home that when parents uh, like give more preference say to the boy than to the girl, then it instills that feeling within the boy that they are more entitled, like Artisha said, that they have that dominance, uh like in society in general, that they can do what they want. But I do feel slowly and steadily that things are changing now with more women's rights and more activists being women. I feel like the society's perspective is changing.
I feel like animal abuse and domestic violence are very similar in the way that animals and sometimes wives are really, really taken for granted. It's always like, at the back of their mind, whatever happens, they're not going to leave. Whatever happens, they're going to come back and like ask for us to stop. They're not going to impose anything on us. They're not going to ask for anything more than what they deserve to get. And I feel like in that way, they're very extremely similar. And I feel like that's where ecofeminism comes into play. But also, it's not, again, only about women, it's about non men. Also, objectification is, I feel, just like there's In a circus, an animal is there to entertain. In a house, often a woman is there to give birth. And reducing any creature to a sole purpose and assuming that the sole purpose of their life is to do something or to be something is is I feel the root of domestic violence and animal abuse.
Um, so, like I said, a lot of the injustices stem from the belief that like some beings are superior than the other. In both cases, be it animal abuse or domestic violence, it stems from the same belief that like we are superior than the other. So yeah, in that way they are connected.
Yeah, so moving on to the next question. Why is it important for women to be a part of the climate change movement? And does climate change particularly affect women?
Can I answer that first?
Yeah, sure.
So women are more affected by the climate crisis because patriarchy demands that women do most of the work. So even in like the recent cases of like the Assam floods, women were expected to clean up, take care of the children, and it impacted women more because at the end of the day, they're doing all of the house chores. Their lives were sucked away. To men, it wasn't as important, or it didn't impact them as much. I think the reason that that's one of the reasons that non-men are so involved in the climate movement, because they've faced injustices firsthand, like, and when you face that, you tend to speak out louder against it.
Again, I mean, referring to something that Disha said in the beginning, there is that classic example of the woman going to fetch water and, droughts, climate change. It's just, and all the domestic work, everything becomes harder with all the effects the that are there due to climate change. Also, just like linking other things that are a problem for the environment as well as women, right? Something like sweatshops. It's like most of them are women. One third of them, at least one third of them, say that they've gotten sexually assaulted during in their workplace. They often don't get maternity leaves. They are forced to take pills because the person who runs the sweatshop doesn't want them to take maternity leave. And I feel like something like sweatshops really, and the fact that it's just like a part of the society, a part of the world that's facing it. I mean, I don't know if there are sweatshops in the US. I've never heard of one. I've never heard of sweatshops in first world countries. So, I mean, it's again related to poverty in certain sections being hit more due to newer modern practices, not only climate change.
Um, yeah, so I would like to say that it's important for women to be part of the environmental movement in general, not just climate change in specific, because honestly, they've been excluded from movements for far too long. And a lot of them happen to be direct stakeholders in such situations, like the example that Disha and Ananya stated. And beyond that, even in terms of things like pregnancy and menstruation, which are exclusive to a certain group of people. So these are severely affected by climate change. In fact, the Love Canal example that Ananya spoke of, um, so they found out that the town of Love Canal was built on a toxic dump, and it was affecting pregnant women and others. It was affecting small children. So I feel that they are direct stakeholders when it comes to environmental degradation, and therefore they should voice what they feel, and it's important for them to be part of the movement.
We have a question from one of the viewers, and that is, do you see feminism or the ecofeminism movement addressing or being inclusive of all people and genders? Have or have not? And do you see men having any role to play in the movement?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, if anything, I feel that if like we're talking about the LGBTQ plus community, I feel that with ecofeminism and women expressing their views more, I feel like it has led way to more movements coming to light and more people being able to express themselves and fight for what they believe in. And I feel that with women fighting, a lot of people also got the courage to fight, because women were always considered were oppressed, and they were not allowed to speak up in public. Like they had to take permission to speak up. So I feel that this has opened up society more, and more people will come out and speak up.
Disha, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. I feel like the feminist movement has already addressed the inclusivity, not to the extent that I think the LGBTQ community would like. So I believe that's not sufficient, but they are taking steps in addressing genders that don't identify themselves as men as a part of the feminist movement. And it's imperative that we do that because women doesn't just mean one gender. There are other genders that don't identify as men, and they've been as oppressed, and they are supposed to be included in the movement. And I've seen a lot of participation of non-men in the movement, which is essential to inclusivity, is essential to the climate movement. And I do see men playing a role in the movement, or the climate movement, or any movement. Men can be eco-feminist, men can be feminist. It isn't limited to non-men. It just means that you need equality and equity as much as anyone else. Men do play, just to answer the second question, men have a huge role to play in the movement because they have privilege. They need to use their privilege to amplify their voices, especially cis men. They have more privilege than non cis men, and that's really, really important that they use that privilege to amplify the voices of the oppressed non men. This is in any movement, not just climate.
Um, yeah, so since the question has feminism slash ecofeminist movement, I feel that the feminist movement is working practically as well to be more inclusive, and it has, grown in that area quite significantly in the past few years. But I feel ecofeminism as a movement, like the Shah stated in the beginning of the webinar, is in theory, when the founder Francoise Devon coined the term, she wrote of how the movement should include people of color and children and you know everyone who's oppressed. But practically, the movement is limited to Caucasian females at this point. So I feel that the movement has not fully realized its potential. It has not become what it was supposed to become, and we still have a lot of work to do in the field of ecofeminism to be fully inclusive.
Ananya or Radhika, would you like to speak to that?
Again, ecofeminism is feminism is just the equity of all genders, and whether it is, I mean, firstly, I would like to say it's not only restricted to gender, and it's spread all across caste, it's spread all across race. And I feel like to address things, we have to first establish the thought that everything on this planet is interconnected, and everything has an effect on at least another thing. Like everything is interconnected, and you can't really detach one issue from the other. So as long as we have that in mind, I feel like, I mean, that's a really great start, is what I feel. And ecofeminism, although it addresses the issue of gender and environment, it kind of neglects things like caste and race.
Okay. So, moving on to the next question. Capitalism and patriarchy both are oppressive to women. And in what ways do you think they led to a harmful split between nature and culture?
One second, can you repeat the question again, please?
Capitalism and patriarchy both have been oppressive to women. And in what ways do you think they both led to a harmful split between nature and culture?
Um, I'll start. So I
Yeah.
feel that capitalism is to be blamed for making culture the oppression of nature. It has formed it has it has made it has redefined being human. I mean, being human through the capitalistic lens is exploiting the environment and the land for to gain financially at the lowest cost. And again, because of the patriarchal stereotypes and the terrible norms, it is women who are not paid equally, and therefore they end up being the cheaper labor. So because of capitalism, not only capitalism is using women and not paying them for the work that they do, and making them destroy the environment. So both of them are basically being destroyed by the same thing. And then in turn they're destroying each other, not each other, but like women are destroying nature because of capitalism, because they are forced to, because they need money. So yeah.
Radhika, would you like to talk?
So Ananya spoke earlier about the gap between rich and the poor, and I feel like capitalism establishes that gap. And in a capitalist economy, the poor are more susceptible to oppression. Same way in a male-dominated society where women are more prone to oppression. Uh, and I feel that in change for one person's benefit, that like say in this current scenario, we say the industrialists are leading the capitalist economy. For their benefit, everything is getting oppressed. And I think I agree with Artisha, where one thing leads to another thing, and because of the poor getting oppressed, I feel like the women are further getting oppressed, because uh, I do feel that even in current scenarios, women are like, especially in the poorer families, women are more vulnerable, and I feel like they share a big brunt of what happens in the country as a whole.
Can I go? So, again, capitalism, when I hear of capitalism, I associate it more over between economic disparity, but patriarchy, then patriarchy is unchecked and unaddressed, and then there is capitalism. It is a bit disastrous for women because capitalism is extremely merit based, and like let's be honest, how many women get an education? How many, like, again, the role in society of women and men is different, and that's, I mean, again, as Disha says, not supposed to be different, but sad reality it is. And that remaining unchecked and us proceeding to a system where people with the merit get the best, and their offsprings inherit all the money that the people who earned it did. So there are people who own money, and like, let's be honest, how many women are actually getting educated? How many women are actually getting the opportunity in not in the first world? I'm talking about the south, the global south. And again, capitalism is widening that gap between the global north and the south. And on top of that, there is that women not getting enough opportunity, and that opportunity becoming less and less and less in many parts of the world. And I feel like that is something that's really affecting women around the world. An example is, again, sweatshops. Is women being the primary workers in sweatshops is a very classic example of how uh, capitalism and patriarchy work out to produce, to violate a lot of human rights, and being very inconsiderate of privilege.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, sorry,
okay,
continue.
yeah. So, yes, capitalism affects everyone. It definitely affects non-men more than it would affect men, because uh, capitalism is basically you have to prove you're worthy to live, and you have to constantly work to prove how productive you are, or you're deemed unnecessary. Patriarchy does fuel capitalism, and patriarchy was a cultural phenomenon that originated. It's an old tradition that's 4,000 years. It originated in the 21,000 BC, and it's not going to go away overnight. So patriarchy is fueling capitalism, and patriarchy wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was started when with the system of marriage, where the woman was given away to the men, and that's how patriarchy originated. And it's so yeah, it does stem other injustices. It does fuel capitalism. That is yeah, it's something that keeps happening. It's a round circle. Yeah.
Uh, Moving on to the last question. Have you ever been subjected to mansplaining, or have you been told to limit yourself because you're a woman in your journey as a climate activist or in general? And how did you manage to tackle it?
Can I go first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So I don't think I've ever been mansplained in the climate movement, because everyone I've interacted with has been very loving and inclusive, very radical. Uh, but otherwise, I have been in a lot of spaces where, yeah, I definitely think it's because I am a woman that this happened, and uh, I know a lot of women. I don't think I know any woman who hasn't been like uh, who hasn't undergone sexual harassment or mansplaining, or hasn't been subject to patriarchy in any way. So yeah, that definitely does happen. Not in the climate movement though, so that's great.
Do any of you else have anything to say to that?
I think I personally feel that my privilege has allowed me to continue my journey in as in environmentalism without facing any of such things. So yeah.
Yeah, similarly, I feel like I've been able to come this far in the climate movement because of my privilege, and because people encourage me regardless of their gender. Yeah, I feel I completely agree with Disha. The climate movement feels extremely inclusive, but just otherwise, yes, mansplaining has I've seen a lot of people mansplain others, and I've also been mansplained, especially by older men who have been fighting for industries, and like, for example, we just someone an older man had an argument with me about how ease of doing business is like the most important thing on the planet, and he just didn't let me speak. Maybe because of age, maybe because of my gender, but yes, I have been mansplained before. Not in the climate movement though.
I think I agree with everyone where everyone in the climate movement has been extremely supportive. However, I do feel that if my background was different, and I do feel that the situation would probably be have different. If I probably came from say a less I mean, I don't know how to like explain it, but I do feel that if my background was different, then I would have been more subjective, because again, it's like the education, it's the environment in which you're brought up, and the values which are instilled in you, that uh, uh like maintain your thought process. And yeah.
Okay, so this was a very informative session, and I'm sure all of us have learned something today and are going back and are going to think about different opinions and views that we've all discussed here. And thanks to all of you for taking part in the discussion. And I also thank all our viewers for watching us throughout this live. We have a couple of other webinars lined up, and tomorrow's topic is about why youth should be involved in policy making. You can check out our social media pages for more updates. Instagram fridaysforfuture.india, Facebook fridaysforfuture.india, and Twitter FFF India. Stay tuned and thank you.